Warriors Unite! Back with another episode of Bigger Warriors 2 in the 1% Club. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys continue to keep conquesting yourselves. Self-control is the key. And also conquesting then things around you under God's purposes. So thank you very much. And I appreciate all the comments, the feedbacks that we have. I'll try to get caught up with some of the shout outs a little bit later as we catch up. There's a bunch in the last week or so. Thank you, my friend Bob, for correcting me on one of the transcripts. I had CR instead of SR. It's obviously SR. So thank you, my friend, on that. Someone also asked about our purpose being to provide and protect. I believe that's the case. That's my opinion. And I believe that's really where the male, the masculine male should be in our society, where we are protecting our world, our society, our country, our families, those type of things, and providing as well. So I know there's a lot of dissension back and forth, and I've also seen a lot of people talking again about how retention is bad for you, and you need to be releasing energy all the time. All I can tell you, my friends, is that from my opinion, this is just my opinion. The last 3 or 4 years now, 4 years, I've had nothing but success, change of life, because I'm not releasing. And that's to me is the most important thing. So celibacy to me is golden. I practiced it many years ago, not very successfully, but I'm telling you from my viewpoint, that's the winner. All right, so let's go through some shout outs here real fast before we take our topic. Destroyer TV, thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. CDuenes, thank you, my friend. JDS, thank you. Destroyer TV again, thank you. User, Shabeeressock, thank you. JoJo Aces, 80 days at this point. Congratulations, keep it up. Onda Booster is 190 days from what I listed here, thank you. Noahide Edward, thank you. EA7, thank you. Derivative, thank you. Lykkos, thank you. YF, mom said that I look 42. Thank you to YF's mom. I appreciate that. That's a great compliment. I appreciate that. Samuel F, thank you. Marlon Jackson, it wants me to interested in selling tank tops, and maybe one day I'll think about doing all that stuff. That's not really the reason I do this, of course, but Marlon, thank you very much for the offer, and if I get one, I'll definitely kind of talk to you about it and see if we could try to put together a t-shirt or something like that too. So YF, thank you again. J the Truth, thank you, and I appreciate that. Stevenmreinhardt, thank you. Or Stevenmreinhardt, Stevenmreinhardt, thank you. John Jennings, thank you. Cmag, thank you. Agustin Mack, maybe control the words a little bit today. Ahmed Moose, thank you. Maronmorster, thank you. Knowledge Harvester, thank you. Carl, thank you. Alfonso Perez, thank you. Reinhardt Bieler, thank you as well. And Funny Animal World, I appreciate all the great comments you guys have made, and you guys are wonderful. Keep them up, keep them coming, and we'll keep growing. I think we're almost at 6,000 viewers coming pretty soon, so that's great. Subscribers, I mean, and that's wonderful to see, and I'm hoping we're making a difference here along with all the other great channels that are out there talking about this idea that we're talking about. So 3 minutes and 30 seconds, let's kind of talk about what we're talking about. The idea is we're going to take the topic of when you release, you allow demons in. This is Indy. Chun had this CHUN, I think is Chun. Thank you, Indy. I appreciate the comment here and the viewpoint. So when we talk about this idea, what we're talking about, like with the last topic, when we talked about the fact that, I think our last one's talking about, when we talk about what we mean by battle against evil. Now, what are we talking about here? All right, so we're talking about when most people are living day to day, they have no idea about what's happening in the world around them. Most of us don't, especially if you don't believe in anything but what you see. We're making the assumption, those people, and I've been one of those people for many, many years, that we see, whatever we see is real. And what you end up seeing then is things in front of you, and obviously you don't believe in anything like spirits or gods or anything like that, because what you're seeing in front of you, you can't see the God, you can't see the spirit, you can't see the energy, you can't see any of the stuff that we talk about, right? So if people who don't, who say, okay, well, semen retention doesn't make sense, it's nonsense, all these things, yet there's a history of people over the world who've been successful with celibacy, brahmacharya, Sufism. Those are not things that you can attribute to semen retention because people can't see it. And so because people can't see it, they can't describe it, the science is not going to help them. Science doesn't really talk about God because science can't prove God. You can prove things in different ways, but a lot of that is once again up to man's interpretation. I know, I did research for many, many years. A lot of the research depends on the numbers you pick, the interpretation of the numbers you pick, your hypothesis. All those things go back into the analysis, making analysis of the data you have, all that stuff. And yes, you can do studies over time, but again, you're coming from a man, as I say male, a man perspective, a human being perspective. Now, the human being does not understand, I don't think any of us do, what's happening around us. Unless, of course, you believe in God, you have a faith in God, you have a strength that there is something more above us, and you also realize the idea that what you see in front of you, this picture you see in front of me, is just an image of what I currently look like in a picture. Now that will change as time goes on, and it's changed for 63 years. But the idea that you're looking at is only an image, a perception that you have. And the funny thing about this is that over time you realize that two people viewing me in this audience are not going to view me the same way. Two people are going to look at me two different ways because of your past experiences, because of how you view things and how you see people. Some people may like what I'm saying, some people may not like what I'm saying. A lot of it depends on you. So we funnel all this stuff through our filters to be able to say, yes, this is correct, no, this is not correct. I don't like what he's saying, I like what he's saying. And those things kind of guide us then in behaviors. Now, when we talk about this idea here, if you believe a lot of things that the people out there in so-called science and all these other people are talking about, the fact that it's great to release, that it's just part of the sexuality that we have nowadays, then you're basically going to buy into it and try to release as much possible. Now, when you do that, right, all of a sudden, you're thinking, okay, this is the greatest thing in the world. And for a few seconds, you do get that greatest feeling because you're releasing. And so people talk about, well, it's a great stress releaser, all these great things. But, and I did this for 47 years, right? Going back and forth on the whole thought pattern of, well, the doctors must be right, the world must be right, all these people must be wrong. Why would they all agree that this is okay? Well, again, it goes back to a common perception people have. Now, way before this last century, you used to have people coming out and saying how bad releasing was. In fact, the whole thing of masturbation was looked upon as a terrible sin. It's destroying people. It led to blindness. It led to mental, issues, all kinds of stuff, and it sapped your energy. And there's reasons why they thought that way. But as we are in this day and age, we always think that the past is those old fogies who don't know anything what they're talking about. And so the new age, which we always think our era, whoever is in our era, is the new age. And we're never going to listen to the past. We have to listen to ourselves. This is why people are doomed to repeat history if they don't learn from it. And it's hard to learn from history when you think it's not your period of time. And so those people must have felt something differently, but it doesn't apply to now. And a lot of people feel like, well, this is the new modern age, progressive age that we're in, open age, like we had back in the 1960s. This is even more open than it was back then. And so why not just releasing? There's no scientific proof that it hurts anybody, so why not do that? But as Indy's talking about, as we all figured out, when you actually do it and you run your own test, which is what I did, and all of a sudden you say, no, I'm not going to do this for a while, and I'm going to see what happens, then you suddenly realize that a lot of those people out there, and for whatever reason, they could be doing it for profit, they could be doing it just because they really believe it, but you have the evidence you need, and that's yourself. And that's why, warriors, when I say to you that this is really your call, whether or not you decide to try semen retention, try celibacy, try those type of things, because you're going to experience good and bad things with everything that you do in life. And so the idea, obviously, of going to celibacy, you're not going to be able to, have intercourse with women all the time unless you find the one you're going to marry, and you're going to struggle with some of those behaviors. And the other side of it, right, you're going to have lots of women, but are you going to have any kind of strong relationship? And then we're not even talking about any of the physical aspects of releasing energy, which we'll talk about now. But the thing is that when you start to believe that maybe there's some doubt in what all these people are saying, which is where a lot of this movement came in, the no-fap movement, and even the MGTOW movement, all these movements saying, okay, this is not the way the world should be. The world should not be set up where men are weak. Men should be taking control. Men should be stronger. Why are men not stronger? That's what the question was back in 10, 15 years ago when a lot of this stuff started. And the question was, why were not men strong enough? Well, part of it was because men got into habits of, in my opinion, releasing. And because they were releasing, they became a lot weaker. And we know the effects of releasing. All you got to do is look at yourself. Now, some of you may be different than us, than the rest of us. That's fine. Maybe it doesn't affect you the same way. All I know is I can tell you my experiences. When you do that kind of stuff, you end up having problems with violence and frustration, and you feel weaker, you don't feel like doing anything, you feel unmotivated, you feel sapped out. And if you look at the other science part of this, the actual nutrients and things you lose, you can actually see why you're sapped out. You can actually see why you're losing yourself and you're self-abusing yourself all the time. And then how you interact with women is on a lower end of things. So basically women look at you differently as well. They don't value you. And so they end up being more masculine because they feel like they have to. They have to take control of situations and actually survive themselves. And so they've been propped up by the movements that we've seen of telling you that you should be boss lady, all this other kind of stuff. And so then they treat men badly. And so now we have a situation where now women are treating men badly. And men can't really stand up for themselves because they're so weak they can't stand up for themselves. They can't even push back because they have no confidence. They've lost themselves. All they want to do is look at pictures and release all the time, and they're a sap for any kind of situation comes along that has any kind of attractive woman in it. And so they fall for that kind of stuff, and now they become weaker. Now, so if you start having doubts, like a lot of you guys who are watching this, then you start saying to yourself, okay, what's happening with this situation? Well, of course, when we talk about evil, we talk about the evil one, we talk about Satan, we talk about temptation, the whole purpose, going back to Adam and Eve and going back to the whole purpose that Satan has, is to try to get you away from thinking about God and your creator. So how would he do that? Well, think to yourself how you would do that. What are some of the biggest vices that men have? And we've seen this. I remember a couple of you guys talked about the prison situation where they brought women in to kind of, have sex with the men so that they would subdue the men, make them less violent, right? You see this in wartime types of things. If you can't have women around, athletes cannot have women around because they become weaker. They call it weaker in the knees, but you also know they're releasing energy because of it. And what we mean by weaker in the knees, releasing energy. And so you're not going to perform as strong as you can because you know that person has lost their vital energy. So when we talk about this, we're talking about the fact that you have a vacuum now. You're releasing your energy. You have a vacuum there that God has given you that you've emptied. It's almost like now you have an empty gas tank. I'll make the analogy. You have an empty gas tank because you've decided to release. And you become weaker. So now you can't fight enemies that come in. Now we could cook at a global scale, and if all men were doing this, and there's a high percentage of men because of what science and people have told them to go ahead and release, they become weak. How is that army going to fight overall? You can just see how other armies could come over and take over our army or our people because the men are so weak. And if you have wild animal berserkers running around, those berserkers are ones who haven't released for a long time. They'll destroy us because the men don't have the strength and don't have the will and don't have the energy to fight on because they've been sapped of their will, their energy. And so they're not going to fight on, so they become very weak. Now, if you look at it, and you can see that as a global type of thing, if a whole town's like that, a whole city's like that, a whole nation's like that, that's going to be a country is going to be overtaken. A town's going to be overtaken, okay? Now, take it individually. You can see what we're saying when there's a vacuum sitting there. Who comes in and takes over? Well, now you're getting into the temptation, and I call the demons coming in. What do I mean by the demons? Well, the demons are other vices, other activities, other actions. They're in the form of actions and behaviors that draw you further away from God. And they all kind of fit together. That's why when you go see parties like this and things, you see humans doing the same thing. Humans looking at their body as sexual objects, drinking. It's almost inevitable. You see drinking and drugs, overeating sometimes. You have all kinds of stuff going on, gambling. All these venues have the same sort of ideas to put together. Why is that? Well, that's because you look and say there's a vacuum in this person right now. And so all these things, and there's a lot of profit-making things, reasons that people do it, but there's also the reason that it's making you weaker. And the more you're doing it, the weaker you become. And eventually, why destroy you if you're another army coming in, I'm thinking about taking you over, when you're destroying yourself? It's always the idea about let the enemy destroy themselves. And that's what you're doing. You're destroying yourself by you doing this all the time. And so when you can just feel it, you know it yourself. And the best test science you can do is on yourself. See how you behave. Try it for 60 days, 90 days. If this doesn't work, well, then try something else. Maybe it's not right for you. I'm not saying this is right for everybody, but I'm saying that in my situation, I recommend it. Because I had 47 years of going back and forth and fighting this and being a person did scientific research in different areas myself over the years and at the college level and different things like that. I know that, I see a pre and post test. I understand what's happened to me. So I can tell you that from my perspective. Now, I'm not always right about everything, and I may be wrong in your particular situation, but I would challenge you out there, all guys, to try and get friends and people to try this and see what happens when you abstain for 60 days or 90 days. I'm guessing that 99% of you will have a tremendous effect. And then you can see the difference between how you were before you abstained. The only thing you did was you stopped from releasing. It makes a huge difference, I believe, in your life. And that's just my viewpoint, but this is why I do this and talk about this, because I believe it's something that you should know about. Put it in your information, and hopefully you can use it and try it at some point. But again, there's a vacuum sitting there, and the demons come in. And how do you fight that demons? I mean, there's a lot of these demons we're talking about. And this also leads us to what Satan always talks about, and the fact that the way to destroy people is through loss of hope, depression, giving up. And so if that vacuum's there and people feel more anxious, they're upset, and now they're getting involved in drugs and alcohol, all these other things, they become even weaker. And then there's more of a chance for that person to be broken down, which they're basically then renouncing God and not believing in God. They're leaving God, and they're going to the devil. So, taking the reverse of all that, in my opinion, the more you keep your nutrients and you keep the things within yourself, the more you're honoring your God, the more you're working with your God to try to overcome all this, and the more your God is going to shine lightly, positively on you, encourage you, support you, love you in many ways, and you're going to then be stronger with abundance of a lot of things in life. And that's what I have felt over the last 3 or 4 years. So again, I think the key is to think about the fact that if you don't see everything in front of you, you know there's other things out there. There's energy, there's spirits, and if you release your energy, what's happening to you? You could see it from your own physical nature. How you feel, how you act. And you have to ask yourself, okay, if I'm losing all this, what's replacing it? Well, what's going to happen is that nature does not like, abhors I think is the word, does not like a vacuum. All right, there's got to be something filling it. There's got to be something. So what do you fill it with? Money or greed or all these type of things, or alcohol or drugs. And that even makes you less of a person, and you become weaker and weaker and weaker, and it's easier for the devil to keep tempting you and motivating you and manipulating you to the point where you're moving more and more away from God. And so you don't read the Bible anymore, you don't talk to God, you don't have a relationship with God anymore, and all of a sudden, now you're moving to the devil. And this is how you get people like serial killers and all these people who go off the deep end, and they kill people, they torture people. All these things happen because people become less and less important when you're caught by the evil one. And you're tempted by the evil one, and now you commit crimes, you don't care about all that, and now one day you're sitting there blaming everybody else, when in fact you started the whole thing off by not realizing that you're releasing and open the door up. And so that's why it's important to keep your shield in front of you, your head plate, your head breast, your armor-plated breast, and realize it's all armor of God. And that when thoughts come through, the thoughts are what's going to hurt you. Do not let the thoughts come through. That's what we talk about monk mode. Now, I'm not perfect in monk mode. I have a long way to go. But I'm at least at the point where monk mode is my goal right now. And so I would recommend you thinking about that as well, warriors, that monk mode is where you should be at. That means any thought that comes through, block it out or move on. When I'm talking about women now, blocking out, moving on. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about your wife. I'm not talking about, somebody that you're close with. That may be your one relationship you want to hold on to, but you got to detach from any other thoughts. And this is not the easiest thing in the world, of course, because you are focusing on a woman. But again, lusting is different, right, than focusing on your wife or something like that. The lust is where the problem is. The lust is the addictive. And we'll talk about that next time. We talk about the fact that addiction to women is real, but can be overcome. All right, so Indy, thank you for this great idea and discussion. I hope you guys got something out of it, and we'll continue talking more about this idea a little bit the next time. All right, till then, guys, a couple things I always leave you with. One, every day is a great day to a great warrior. You guys are all great warriors. And secondly, we have got to continue to recognize that if we release, we're opening the doors up for the evil one to come in. And so we've got to continue to battle on! Have a great night, my friends, and keep battling on.